Hi, everyone, and welcome to the main meeting of the ICODR membership. It is wonderful to see all of your faces. And I just wanted to take a moment before we started to talk about our preparations for ODR 2026, which is happening at Harvard in mid-June. It's great. The registrations are rolling in. The AAA conference that's happening the next day at Suffolk also. We have incredible participation there. And I've been a little bit overwhelmed by the interest in our hackathon. We're doing the vibeodr.com hackathon, and we have students signing up left and right coming in. So now I'm getting a little worried. We got to have a lot of quad code credits for all of these law students rolling in. So I'm going to see what favors I can call in with my friends at Anthropic. But please don't hesitate to buy your tickets. If you want to stay in the dorms with us at Lesley University, please let me know soon because I provide that list to them. But it's going to be a wonderful event. I know many of us on this call are going to be there. Ethan, we are really looking forward to celebrating you. So you're going to get a little of the treatment that I've gotten in the wake of this article. You know, everybody's going to be talking about how great you are. So you better steel yourself for that. But you deserve all of it. So, okay. Any announcements that people want to make before we dive in to our guests from Bot Mediation? All right, sounds good. And I'm going to continue to keep admitting people. But so wonderful to have you, Darren. Thank you, and Nicholas and Curtis. So please, will you introduce yourselves? And then the floor is yours.
Sure. My name is Darren Fancher. I'm an attorney, as many of you are. My background's varied from legal tech to finance, back to legal tech. The most recent big project I worked on, I was the founder of a company called CaseBureau, which is a personal injury case management solution. We'd sold that a few years back. And I'll bleed that a little bit into how we got here. Curtis is on. He's got the bot hat down there.
Oh, nice.
Curtis
On brand. Well done.
is is a lawyer who's deeply rooted on the defense side, just a black belt in many areas, but had come to me a few years ago with an idea. And it was sort of like late COVID, post sale of Case Beer for me. And I was sort of in that, spending a lot more time with my family than they probably wanted. And he's like, "Hey, I've got this idea. Let's sit down and talk." And I was like, "Oh." I played hard to get for a while and eventually agreed because persistence pays off. And we sat down in a cafe, and he busts out a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm expecting who knows what at this point, maybe some legal tech kind of idea. And he's like, "I've got this thing. Like maybe we can do AI and mediation." And I was like, "I don't know, man." And he goes through a few slides and he explains the problem to me. And the problem, as he's perceived it as a practicing attorney, as well as many of you know, it really comes down to scheduling. It takes a long time to book an agreeable mediator. And through the course of the discussion and what will ultimately be a famous and framed PowerPoint that was just like my kid could have done it kind of thing, we came to the agreement that there's definitely something to be done here. I've got Nick on as well. Nick is our head of product. Nick comes with a background in security and product development. And not on, we have a developer that I cherry picked from my case peer days who built what you're about to see. Curtis, I know you're on. I don't know if you want to mention a little bit about your background.
I'll keep it short. Hi, everyone, and thanks so much, Colin, for having us on here. My background, as Darren explained, is litigation, mostly defense side, and my frustration was with just sort of the double tracking of effort with being a litigator. Meaning, if I had a client I was defending and we wanted to explore, settlement early on, or at least get a sense of what the exposure might be on a claim, I'd end up, litigating for a month or two or three while I was preparing to do a mediation without really knowing if it was going to be successful or sometimes an utter waste of time. And so I thought if there was a way to accelerate that process, at least for certain case types and at least for certain case sizes, that could be extremely valuable. And so certainly, building avatars is not exotic or new or difficult, but having avatars that can, in a fully synchronous way, engage in a legal negotiation, but trained on actual case information, I thought would be an intriguing pursuit. And I believed when we started, I couldn't prove it, but I believed that there was a logarithmic way or algorithmic way to explain a successful settlement dynamic, sort of like negotiation or game theory. And likewise, I thought that if you studied enough case histories, you could determine, pretty early on in a negotiation what was probably doomed to fail. So as long as we had a good pulse on both of those scenarios, I felt that the avatars could be trained to identify a poor trajectory towards settlement and to offer advice to the combatants, and likewise to support and to encourage and to give positive feedback to parties who are engaged in a positive or good faith step at each stage of the process. So that was the inspiration or hypothesis behind it, and then we were able to prove the hypothesis and arm our avatars, as you'll see shortly, to engage in the battle. So we're excited to be here. And I know it's called bot mediation, but I qualify the product most of the time when we show it. ODR is a pretty wide open spectrum, from very basic court administered systems on the one hand, asynchronous, to the most extreme form of dispute resolution, the Rolls-Royce version being a human mediator. And so we see bot mediation as one of the many upstarts in the middle of that spectrum somewhere, maybe not dead center, but it's far removed from a human's touch on the one hand, but we feel it's very advanced compared to a lot of other options that were built in the past.
Fantastic. Nick, do you want to say anything?
Thanks.
Morning, everyone. Not too much to add. I think Darren and Curtis covered a lot of it.
Great.
So excited to get everyone plugged in to show you on.
I love your
Nick,
backgrounds
yeah.
with bot mediation all the way down the hallway too.
Mhm.
Kudos to you. Yeah, Darren, Curtis, Nick, do you want to show the product, or do you want to talk a little bit more about? Yeah, please.
I mean, I think Curtis did a great job of summarizing kind of how we got here, and setting up. We should really set up sort of a little bit about bot mediation in terms of the process before we kick off a mediation. So it's extraordinarily familiar. We had decided we wanted this to be as close to what folks are used to as possible. So just like a traditional mediation with a human, both parties agree to mediate. Both parties will submit their briefs. Those are accepted. We're not showing off quite yet our the input at this point. Anyway, it is submitted. That is then reviewed. We have an AI review, and then we do have human in the middle. We have a bench of deeply experienced mediators who are also involved in this process. They're looking at what's been submitted as well as what AI has reviewed and summarized. That information is then utilized by what you're about to see, which is the bot mediator. So our real goal there was to maintain the human element, as well as have a local perspective. And it allows us to be able to, once submissions are made, the mediators are available, we can book that mediation within 5 business days. And we also have a form fill that's been developed by several mediators over the last year and a half that allows us to try to narrow in on what they're looking for. We can talk more about the future of the product and what might look like a white label program as we continue to evolve. But basically that entry point is the submission. Once it's booked, we'll show you what you sit down for. We'll admit up front, we do treat this a little differently than traditional mediation. And the idea is you really put everything up front. There won't be opportunities to bring out a smoking gun and say, aha, mediator, here's my secret sauce I was saving. We are very clear about that when the stuff is submitted, it all goes in. It's kept confidential because the humans there, we feel like we do maintain the mediator confidentiality. So that's kind of the setup. Actually, I should also mention cases at this point, we only limit them to personal injury cases and employment cases. And we're very clear with the parties. We're asking them to come with an intent to resolve the case. As such, we're asking plaintiffs to come to the table, not demanding more than $350,000. And we do ask defense to step up to the table and maybe not start at zero. So with that, I think we can probably show off what we've got. Nick, I think you're logged in as maybe defense. I'm already logged in as plaintiff. And
Nick.
I think we've got, and you guys are, by the way, folks, you're free to interrupt with questions if you're like, hey, how does, what's going on, or how does that work?
Yeah, and I
I'm
said
gonna
for people to put questions in the chat too. So when you're done with your presentation,
Perfect.
we can go through what people put there.
So Nick, I think you're logged in.
That's correct.
And parties can hear me?
We can't hear the audio from the video that's playing, unfortunately. I don't know, was that
Right.
shared when you shared your screen?
Yeah, I think we need to share sound.
Oh, hang on, guys. Let me stop sharing, try again. I love that, despite being perceived as a tech guy, these things can share sound. There we go.
They moved it around. It used to be at the bottom of the share screen, and now it's on the right. So I had to hunt for it too.
It's, I think we had a very similar issue when we went and presented at ABA Tech Show, and Curtis and I were all ready to go, and everything was set, and we start, and sure enough, we go to show off during our limited time pitch, and yeah, it was a no sound situation, but Curtis is fast, and we kept it going. So here we go. Let's see if I got it going right here. You guys can see it now.
No.
I see
Unfortunately, we're only seeing your desktop.
I see a lot of icons. Busy guy.
Yeah, you look very busy.
I will not judge because I'm not going to show my desktop either. So
there's a joke. I've got I'm like a squirrel. Like I've got everything just all over seated all over the place. All right, let's try my share again. Share sound, share Safari. I'm pretty sure we're going to get it this time. How do we feel about that?
Looks good.
Looks good.
Great. Here we go. Thanks for your patience.
I'd like to welcome counsel for both sides and their respective clients to bot mediation.
Yes.
For those of you who have participated in a live or Zoom mediation, this joint session and the entire process will look and feel very familiar. Bot mediation is confidential, so when I caucus separately with each side, none of my recommendations or private exchanges will be shared with the opposing party. All of my settlement advice is driven by artificial intelligence. The only information I will share with the other party are your offers and counteroffers. Folks, this marks the conclusion of our joint session, so I'm going to invite the plaintiff and their counsel to join me for a private breakout session to begin working on an opening settlement demand.
So that's the starting point. Nick has heard something similar on his side. At some point, we'll do a quick screen share and you can take a peek at defense. I'll say up front, you'll notice we will have different mediators. So we've got female at this point and a few others, and we're actually working on Spanish now. Also, I didn't really set up the case ahead of time. This would be a case, if I were to describe it, it's a mid 5-digit case, maybe plaintiffs. This is, I think, an employment case, probably wrongful termination. It's been, again, if the defense is thinking, hey, I want to get away with, 10 to 30,000 on this, and plaintiffs definitely hoping for, maybe 100, and somewhere in the middle, this would be where it's thinking. So I'll start.
This is a private session with the plaintiff and plaintiff's counsel. I will not attempt to influence your opening demand, but I will offer input on all offers and counteroffers throughout the course of the mediation. To get the process underway, please enter your opening settlement demand in the right-hand column.
So you click here, and we wanted to be able to sort of help plaintiffs get a sense of where a good place to start might be, knowing what they're demanding in their briefs. As such, we've got a slider here where they can sort of choose. We have kind of already coached them, and in the training, they would learn that obviously something green is something that's going to be well received. Something red might be something that doesn't lead to a favorable result and may offend the other party. I'm going to just go ahead and take what was recommended and send that over.
Thank you for submitting your opening settlement demand. Let me take this over to the defense. I will do my best to get them to make an initial offer that gives us a shot at resolving your case. I will be back shortly, so in the meantime, please think about what your next settlement demand might look like. I really appreciate your patience and professionalism. As you can see in the right-hand margin, the defendant has submitted a counteroffer to your settlement demand. I would appreciate it if you would respond with a counter that will help move this process forward. Please propose a new settlement demand in the right column, and I'll offer my input before taking it to the other side.
Defense strategies often look like 5 to 10 in here from what we've seen. So now I can start making some decisions. I'm at 183. I feel those numbers very low. So my counter is to see if he's going to move much in the next round here. So maybe I'll move it to 180,000. I'm not going to move much. I've seen the number. I can confirm it. I can see then my progress. I have another chance to confirm just in case. We've had a few times where folks in the early days had fat thumbed a number and maybe offered way too much and regretted it because it will settle right away. But anyway, in a belt and suspenders approach, there are multiple confirmations.
I see your proposed counter, but I don't think this number is going to move the process forward. If I submit this number to the other side, I am going to have a hard time getting them to put as much money on the table as I think they should. In the right column, you will see a settlement demand that I recommend that you adopt at this juncture. It will give me some leverage when I go back to the other side, and I think it will substantially improve our chances of getting this case settled.
So I think you can probably see on the right-hand side here, I'll highlight it. We've got case-specific feedback that's basically been culled from for briefs as well as from the human mediator. And that's part of the confirmation that we have them running through in sort of quality control and prioritizing arguments. And in this case, it says, I'm urging you to reevaluate your posture. Your client did not seek treatment for emotional distress until after he had filed a lawsuit against LG Electronics, hinting that perhaps it was recommended by counsel. So I'll take this into account. I'm not obligated to submit an amount less than the number that's recommended, but for our purposes here, I'll just use it to keep the ball moving forward. Any questions at this point?
No, it's fascinating. There's lots of comments,
Yeah,
but
looks
we'll
good.
address it after the demo's end.
I'll take a peek next time the video is running. That looks like a pretty steep. I don't like that. Maybe we'll do. We'll go 160.
I have noted the dollar amount authorized by your client. Let me take this to the other side, and I will do my best to keep the process moving. In the meantime, please make yourselves comfortable, and I will be back shortly. As you can see in the right-hand margin, the defendant has submitted a counteroffer to your settlement demand. I would appreciate it if you would respond with a counter that will help move this process forward. Please propose a new settlement demand in the right column, and I'll offer my input before taking it to the other side.
Well, I'll move on this one, hoping I can get some traction on the other side. I do have some Well, Nick is there. I do have the ability to message back and forth. We don't have a problem with them calling one another, so we do have things like send the message. Can we discuss privately? Oops. Well, I may be having a. Let's see if we're having an issue. There we go. So I can send messages over uh, and buy some time, see if they're still there, if they're taking a long time. We do have the ability to say best and final, and then of course yes and no. Uh, we're evaluating and working on the ability to trade information back and forth. Having been AI reviewed, the challenge we're having is that sometimes the messages back and forth aren't entirely polite. So we're trying to figure out what we're willing to do there in terms of allowing direct communication between both parties on a platform. And again, they're always free to pick up the phone and they can use any expletives they'd like. Oh, hang on. I'm in the driver's seat here. Sorry about that. Nick, did that come across?
To the other side.
You're saying it again, Darren?
My best.
You want me to resend it? There, I'll refresh my screen.
I see it.
Nick, is yours, did it come over?
We heard a little of Nick's avatar. Sounds like it's a British woman. So I'm kind of
Nick,
curious to see what she looks like too. Yeah.
Nick, do you want to do a quick screen share?
I can do that. Darren, I think you may need to go ahead and submit an offer back over to me. I don't think it came through. So if you want to try keying that in again.
Sorry, guys.
And 1 second for the group, I'll share a screen here.
You can see in the right-hand margin, the plaintiff has just made a counter to your settlement offer.
So that was a bit of a tidbit of the voice. I have to send a request, I guess, to screen share. So once whoever gets that, oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay. All right. So I think pretty clearly everyone can see that there's a different mediator on my side. That's kind of the cool thing about bot mediation is you don't have to have the same skinning of your experience, if you will. The underlying technology is completely the same. So you have the ability to select upfront the avatar that you wish for your session, and it can be different from that of opposing counsel. So let me go ahead and submit my counter offer to Darren here.
I see your current offer, but I'm concerned that it may prematurely stall the negotiation process.
And we've heard this message before, but on the plaintiff side. So just to confirm, the guidance that we're receiving in session is going to come for both parties, ultimately, depending on the offer amount submitted. So you can see clearly that my mediator is asking me to put a little more money on the table. So I'll go ahead and oblige.
I have noted the dollar amount authorized by your client. Let me take this to the other side, and I will do my best to keep the process moving.
Thanks, Nick, for jumping in. I had to refresh. Every once in a while, we get a brief pause. All right. I think you're at 17. Am I sharing again, Nick?
I stopped my screen share, so if you'd like to go ahead and share again.
And I'll jump in quickly. Colin had mentioned resembling a shuttle negotiation. There's a thing or two that may or may not display in terms of feature set. So one is bracketed negotiations, and there's lots of opinions about brackets. Some lawyers love them and swear by them, and mediators too, and some really dislike them, and they don't like them. They don't want to be involved in them. So you can get lots of varying opinions about brackets, but nevertheless, more often than not, we heard that it can be effective, especially when there's a big distance to kick off a negotiation, and or when there's a very little amount of progress early in a negotiation is typically when a mediator would brandish, that change in negotiation tactic. So our AI is powered with bracketing capability. The runway here is shortened just to save everybody time. So there's not enough to tick the right, elements to see brackets, but in a normal real mediation, you would see them. We've seen them, more than multiple times on our platform, including live cases, real cases with bracketing, and they have been very effective when they've been deployed, getting people moving and breaking elbows, if you will.
We'll get in a moment to what the potential outcomes are as well. At this point, I'll confirm, and I don't know, we probably have a couple more rounds here.
I think you have room in your numbers to maneuver strategically. I strongly suggest.
All right, I will work with you. Not a big jump anyway.
As you
I
can
have noted
see,
the dollar amount authorized by your client. Let me take this to the other side, and I will do my best to keep the process moving. In the meantime, please make yourselves comfortable, and I will be back shortly.
We haven't seen this yet, but Robert
We've
raised
been
a
at
good
this for a
question.
while now, and we might be getting to the end of the road. Whether or not you choose to express this to the other side, I'd like you to give me your best number now. At this point, neither side should be posturing, and I will be sure to make this clear to the defense. Should you decide to take my advice, I will push the defense to do the same.
All right. I don't know if this will be appealing or not, but we'll take a look where we're at real quick. You can, something that some of the younger attorneys were very happy to say, oh, quick, there's my midpoint. Let's see where I'm at. Where have I moved? I can see, just the status here. Let's see if that
I'd like to
gets
thank
taken.
you and your client for taking time to formulate a new settlement demand. I feel this is a positive step in the right direction, so I am going to take this to the other side and see if we can generate some momentum. Folks, we have made significant progress today, but I can see that it's going to take more than exchanging numbers to get this case settled. The good news is that the gap between the parties has narrowed, and I do believe there is a decent chance I can get this case resolved with a mediator's proposal. Whenever I do this, it is a double blind, so that unless both sides agree to it, neither side will know if the other party accepted my proposal. In other words, if only one side accepts my proposal, I will simply announce that the case did not settle. On the other hand, if both sides accept, then I will announce that your case has been settled. I would encourage you to click or type yes if you would like to receive a mediator's proposal. Please note that I will not issue a mediator's proposal unless both sides have requested it.
So it's worth noting here, as I'm guessing people want to see what number comes out. I'll note that the midpoint is 65,000. The three outcomes, as in any traditional human mediation, are more or less the same. Obviously, if we weren't close enough, given the information that where it thinks it should settle, it would say it was a failed negotiation, in which case you'll see the output. We landed on a mediator's proposal, and obviously parties agreed. We would have settled the case on here, but let's go ahead and see if Nick agrees and gives us a mediator's proposal.
I have some positive news. Both sides have requested a mediator's proposal, so I have formulated a number that I feel both parties are most likely to accept. If both sides click accept within the time allotted, then you will receive confirmation that your case has been settled. On the other hand, if one side clicks reject or fails to provide a timely response, then I will notify each of you that your case has not been settled. Once again, thank you for using bot mediation. I have great news to share with both parties. You have agreed to settle this case for the dollar amount shown in the right margin, which you should memorialize in a binding written settlement agreement. Once again, thank you for entrusting bot mediation to help you resolve this matter, and I look forward to working with you again soon.
So from here, I'll share what the settlement confirmation form looks like. We don't offer a settlement agreement. We'd originally worked something into it, and the request was we're not going to use it. So at this point, both parties would then go back and use their agreements to usually the defense will provide the settlement agreement. So we'll take a look, and you guys can see this. So whether this was a successful or failed negotiation, now you've got the data that you can go back and utilize. This does inform what happened, that it was resolved, includes the progress that was made in the settlement amount, as well as the time spent. While I'm mentioning the time spent, most of the cases have settled within an hour. I think the outliers were sort of an hour and 40 minutes, with one settling closer to 45 minutes. And if this were failed, part of the bot mediation process is that then we can package this up. And if both parties agree, we'll share that with some of our mediation partners, who would then be able to take this information and book a half-day mediation. And they try to book that on an accelerated timeline so that they can get in quickly. Because at that point, as you can see, you're now, if this hadn't settled, you're now dealing with the difference between 95,000 and 35,000 as opposed to, say, where things started at like 180 and 5. So, whether they do that on a phone call, whether they do that with a human mediator at that point, we feel like progress has been made. We've had folks come back to us when cases did not settle on platform and say, "Oh, it did settle. Thank you guys very much. You guys were able to close that gap quite a bit." And 2 phone calls later, cases have been settling. We like this also because whether you're a mediator using this or whether you're the parties, you kind of can start building out playbooks and seeing what kind of moves have been made along the way. So we're really excited about the data side of this as well. I will stop sharing. Maybe we want to talk about questions, or do you guys have?
Yeah. Wow. So many interesting choices. So many, first of all, the user experience is very slick, very smooth. I was just saying, I've never seen an AI avatar kind of lay everything out there. So let me just ask a couple questions, and I think other people have questions too we can surface. So the avatars, are they the mediator, or are they kind of the counsel? Because it seems like sometimes they're providing advice to the client. I mean, it may be more of an evaluative mediation model. And as I say, that's the way JAMS works, right? They hire federal judges. They don't do joint sessions, right? You're in one room, you talk to the mediator, and then they go to the other room. So it's kind of like that. But what is the vision for that AI avatar? What are they, the bot mediator, or is the platform the bot mediator?
I actually like the question, Curtis. I'm almost wondering what you would say to this, but I think the platform, we view this as a platform for early resolutions. So I guess in part, I view the platform as the mediator, and yet I still view the avatar as driving the process, much like our conversations and having been in mediations. Like, I definitely get some of that pushback along the way of like, hey, we're not going to, you got to be kidding me.
Sure.
And, in a personal injury case, it's like, hey, they didn't seek more than 2 treatments. Why are you asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars? Mm-hmm. So that's been my experience, and the mediators that have been working with us on developing this out have given the same feedback. So everything, by the way, it's funny, here in Southern California, we've been very particular about the word choice and canter and sort of how the mediators or the bots work. And every now and then someone's like, I feel like I just heard that from one of my mediators, and we have to chuckle because a lot of the scripting is driven by the folks who have been doing this with them. So we're not that surprised. At this point, you'll notice bots completely on rails, bots not able to hallucinate, bots not making stuff up. It's definitely a treasure trove of comments and video polls that enable it to work the way it does. We're certainly looking at what the future looks like. I'm sure everyone else is doing the same. But at this point, bot's been settling cases, and people are pleased, like you said, with the experience. Feels very familiar to them.
For sure. And let me just ask technologically, are those clips pre-rendered? So it's not like the AI is dynamically
We're currently
deciding.
correct. We're currently working
Yeah.
with pre-renders. Yes.
Got it. Well, that makes sense. I mean, eventually we'll get to the point where we can have a real-time video.
We're waiting for. I mean, don't get me wrong. We're waiting for it. I don't know what I'll burn in tokens to be rendering on the fly like that, but we're excited to show you what 3.0 looks like. We just aren't quite there yet.
Well, those are the most attractive mediators I've ever seen in my life. I'm almost tempted to just say yes based on, wow, okay, sure, whatever. The other, I don't know, maybe I'm making a comment on your avatars, or I'm making a comment on the average attractiveness of most of the mediators that I've interacted with. So the other question I have, it is like a settlement conference, right? I mean, this is like the goal is to find a number that can, so for a monetary dispute, right, this is great because the resolution is what's the number. And I think the graph is genius because it shows that progress. Is there an opportunity to bring in non-monetary things like, hey, I can pay you faster but I'll pay you less money? I mean, is that factored into the design?
So bot can't take into account anything but monetary exchanges at this point. We are evaluating for lemon law cases and some other case types the ability to have an interjection or to pre-agree to certain elements.
Sure.
But it's also the opportunity to pick up the phone. So we don't, and I know that's the goal is to avoid it, but if someone really had a compelling, like, hey,
oh yeah, they can text each other, they can email each other, they can,
and look, we know that's still happening.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I stole that question from Renee. She was saying, is there an opportunity to suggest non-monetary settlement options along with the monetary? So that's another interesting angle here. There were a couple of times when the bot responded and put in a sentence or two about the case. And so there must be a system on the back end where people can upload a lot of documents and then the bot can factor that in.
Yeah, that's the briefs that are submitted plus the human and the AI are all look for those moments and ideas in terms of what the bot can use to push back. Mm-hmm. And we'll push back and drive to a midpoint.
And I think that was driven by the defense and insurance side, Colin, because they don't really like to move or put more dollars on the table without some additional justification. They're just sort of like a sack race or three-legged race type of process for them. It's like, oh, why did you, go beyond your, authority? Well, then, they mentioned this towards the end and, it is a problem, so they just like having something substantive to nudge, to start sliding more dollars on the table incrementally. And so it was really sort of to appease, if you will, the insurance/defense side of this, because it takes two parties to dance, and so we have to placate both the defense and the plaintiff side. So that's why the substantive part was a newer iteration of the product and really made heads swivel a lot when we brought that on board, because it was just a whole different level of interest, I guess, and intrigue. But also I think your insight about the graph, there's nothing exotic about it. Lawyers go on Excel and stuff and kind of track numbers back and forth. So the graph itself isn't particularly exotic, but the thing that's exotic is what you can't see, I think, insofar as our system doesn't just capture what you did, it also captures what you attempted to do. So we have data, proof via data that our avatars are compelling, they are persuasive, insofar as after every negotiation, we can see what parties tried to do and what they ultimately did. And there is a significant difference, particularly with respect to brackets. We know they work as well. So I think that's just a fascinating kind of under the hood, achievement of our technology that's not apparent to the users, but certainly we can see that our avatars are influential, and someday we should be able to study whether one type of avatar is more influential than the other, and that's a whole interesting sort of law review or sort of more academic pursuit.
For sure. Yeah, there was a guy named Don Philbin out of Texas who had a website called Picture It Settled, and I think I know the website is shut down, but it was interesting because it also offered that graph intel, and he ran lots and lots of negotiations through this. and actually trained on the negotiations. So you could actually start with some initial bids and it would predict where your eventual agreement would be. And I think if you get enough cases in this, you have data, you could train on that model and say, look, based on this negotiation. I mean, Bob asked a question, which I think is a really good one at the beginning, which is, if the AI is offering advice, how does it guarantee neutrality? I mean, there may be, Darren, it's funny, you said in these negotiations, oftentimes people bring up facts. They'll say, look, I can't go any lower than this. He already had 3 surgeries on his back. And, documented medical expenses is already 120K. So it's not like we can just average these numbers out and go to the middle. Like I have hard numbers. So in that graph, presumably the party, that's representing the person that has the medical expenses, they're not going to be going as deep in terms of moving towards the middle. Whereas maybe the insurance carrier would move more. So, how do you, if the AI is analyzing all that information and factoring it into its advice, that's one thing. But if it's just trying to get to the ZOPA, trying to get to yes, to figure out what the number is going to be that gets a resolution, how do you guarantee neutrality in essence is the question.
So I think the important part and why we work with human mediators and why we don't feel like we're the solution for every case. In fact, we refer cases out when they come to us and they don't fit our sort of sweet spot, or we feel like, hey, this person really wants to be heard. We recognize the importance of the human in traditional mediation. So as much as we are looking for cases, we're also a source of cases for traditional mediation. In terms of guaranteeing neutrality, it's back, we rely heavily on the human to be able to say, hey, these are the neutrals we utilize and work with have a pretty good idea of what these things should be shaping up and what they look like. So it's not like we're just looking to get to yes and find some midpoint and strike it. The midpoint that was proposed was 65, and I think it settled at like 59. So it's definitely looking at what's already been fed into the system and where it is headed. It doesn't, and the irony is it doesn't, there is some algorithmically driven elements here, but it's not just, just targeting that original projection either. So it's the human element is still a big part of getting to that neutrality.
Well, that's also the question that Malti asked. She said, how can the parties be helped in reality testing their offers during the mediation process? Because sometimes somebody will put an unrealistic number on the table. And I know that the mediator did say, hey, look, if that's going to be your offer, I'm worried that's not going to be received very well by the other side. It's a little bit of gentle challenging. If somebody's, if I came into the room and one party said 5,000, the other party said 186, I'd be like, oh boy, this is going to be a slog to try and get those numbers to the middle. But, oftentimes that's the role of the neutral is saying, are you sure? Like if you received that offer, how would you take it? You sort of ask those questions. So,
it's kind of why we have that starter, the recommended range to start in. Having seen, it's trained on past mediations, so it's able to sort of say, hey, this is sort of where you can start and still get there.
Sure.
Defense is a little tougher. They often do start with something relatively low. The dream come true that I think every mediator, arbitrator would love to see everyone come forward with very realistic expectations and maybe do away with the first couple of rounds. And we kind of do a little bit of that anyway. So that's sort of part of baked into our process. But it does come back to you still have 2 intelligent. By the way, this isn't something that's utilized by the individual. This is definitely something for the attorneys to use. Whether the attorneys invite the client to join, we know it's happened a few times on defense, less so for plaintiffs. You have 2 intelligent attorneys on either side that can walk away at any time. I'm sure most of the mediators have seen. And we've had it happen where it's like, we're very clear about where we want them to start, and they'll just say, nope, put in $1 million. And then the next round, $1 million. And then parties bail because they're like, hey, this is a failed mediation. Totally acceptable. We're sorry to see that they wasted their time, but we're acknowledging that that's still part of the process that we all deal with anyway.
Well, it's a settlement negotiation manager. It's great. It's a console where you go in, you see all your bids, it's all centralized. I've certainly had mediations where we get through the first 100,000 of the gap, and we get down to 5,000, and then we spend the next hour and a half on the 5,000. And it's just because it's the salami slicing. No, right? Nobody wants to be the last one to give in before an agreement. And I thought the double blind mediator statement was very interesting, right? It's like, look, I'm going to put this offer on the table. Both of you have to click accept. If either of you don't click accept, or if both of you click reject, well, that's fine. We just move on with the negotiation. Yeah. But that made me think a little bit of CyberSettle, which was also a very influential company with blind bidding and things like that. But CyberSettle, when you agreed to use the process, you agreed to be bound by the outcome.
Right.
And it's interesting here, one of the criticisms of mediation and settlement conferences is that sometimes opposing counsel will use it to fish for information. And they can come in and make some offers, and then they get a sense of what your pain point is. And then they say, okay, well, now we're out. And then they go to litigation, and they kind of know where to come in. So there's no binding nature to this, right? It's just, we're in a conversation. They talk about human in the loop AI. That's what this is. The humans are in complete control. There's not going to be any outcome that both parties don't agree to. So I think that's very creative as well.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly the whole philosophy behind it, is that it's mutually consensual. I mean, we have terms and conditions on the front end where the parties agree and understand it's mutually consensual. And you didn't see this, but you can override the mediator. Just like if I disagree with the neutral's assessment of what I should do, or if I have a client I have a hard time controlling, I might be like, look, Bob, I get what you're saying, but I'm having a hard time with this guy. We got to at least put this number forward to start out, even if you think it's too high. So there's plenty of that to be done in a regular, human mediation, but you can do that as well on bot. But we do have some tools to try to, rein the parties in. And even if you didn't get to a settlement, the lawyers have pointed out over and over and over again, there's a lot of value add to the progress made, if that makes sense. Because a lot of times the defense, they don't get a demand necessarily on every claim. So how do they reserve for that? How do they benchmark their exposure? Like, is this going to cost us, 20 grand, or is this going to cost us $250,000 of defense costs
Sure.
and indemnity on top of that? So they don't like, not knowing, carriers like certainty, and they like to be able to set reserves. So from that standpoint, to jump onto the product, even if you don't resolve it on platform, they see a lot of value to understanding what it probably will take. And even if one side accepted the proposal and the other side rejected it, the delta between the two is, 20 or 30 grand. And they can kind of put a note to the file, forget the summary judgment motion, just get on the phone, get back.
This is close enough.
Let's just, just work this down and try to close this out without escalating the litigation. So it's a lot of value add, I think, in terms of the momentum towards settlement. And maybe you go out and you hire a human mediator to close it.
Yeah.
And then we voluntarily convey the settlement progress to any neutral of their choice, so they can hit the ground running and sort of start like at the afternoon. Like you're through the BS rounds, and let's just focus on closing out, and like you said, that last slice of salami part of the negotiation.
Well, Lord knows if I'm a mediator, I'd much prefer parties that have previously negotiated and gotten from 200K and 5K to 120 and 160. That's like an easier mediation. So can I ask about how the finances work? Do you get paid a portion of the settlement if a settlement's achieved? Is there a filing fee up front? Is it flat rate? How does that work?
It's $14.95 per side.
$14.95.
$1,495 per side.
Wow. Okay. All right. Flat rate.
And the mediators are compensated. So we've got the human mediator is compensated for their time.
Is built into that fee.
Yeah.
As well. Okay. Wow. All right. Other questions, reactions, thoughts from everybody? This is very creative. I mean, there's so many things in this platform I've never seen before in an ODR system. So I think that's very cool.
Coming from you, we're excited to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And attractive mediators.
We've been kind of heads down. We're getting out a little bit more. But right now, we're only available in California. We're kind of going to start moving across the country because we do need local mediators in each market. And then, I think, because we've been pretty focused on California, we haven't had a chance to cross paths yet.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
and we may try to make it out to the event. I think it's in June. It's coming up quick.
Yeah, that'd be great. It'd be great to see it. I mean, another interesting thing would be there's so many famous mediators. I mean, I think about like Danny Weinstein, who's just like legendary mediator and evaluative mediator, kind of like this model. Be interesting to replace your recorded AI videos with Danny, because one of the things that he is tough, man. He will beat people up and say, this is a crazy offer. There's no way that the other side's going to bite on this. So, I don't know if he'd be willing to put his mouth into, cases that he's never thought about. But this evaluative mediation model, that's oftentimes what counsel want. And that's why I'm saying JAMS has gravitated to that, because these are lawyers that want these cases closed. So,
Right.
What tools can you bring in to get me to the answer? Because I don't want to have this case anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
More than anything, having worked closely on the plaintiff side and now with defense, they've got huge, caseloads, and this really gives them a place to
Sure.
expedite it, especially on the low value cases that they don't perceive are worth the extra effort. We know that on the client side, their clients are definitely also driving, for quicker resolution and cost savings. We're working with some folks, and they're looking at deploying this, widely in terms of just the really, even ones that we view this as something that on cases they might not mediate otherwise, they may go ahead and
For
throw it
sure.
on the platform just to hit the accelerator.
I will say, I'm not an evaluative mediator. I'm a facilitative mediator. So there are some aspects of this platform that it's like, oof, no joint session, they're not really communicating. Even when they talk to each other, it's in that menu, there's only a couple different things that you can say. I remember when my boys were young, they played a game called Club Penguin, where they were animated penguins running around. And they didn't want people to type natural text, open text to the other side, because people would say hurtful things and it's for little kids. So they would sort of pick from this menu, and it's all very anodyne statements. So I looked at your options. I'm like, well, that's not going to be alienating the other side. But the mediation is just assisted negotiation, and that's what you're doing. You're assisting in negotiation. But there's the evaluative approach, there's the facilitative approach, which is what I gravitate towards, and then there's the transformative approach, which is really about emotional stuff. And I don't think you guys are looking at emotional type cases, divorces and
We would pass
workplace.
those along to
Pass
human
those along.
mediators.
And again, it's the attorneys, and the attorneys they don't bring their heart. They're just trying to figure out what's the number,
Get
but
settled.
and the clarity that it provides, the UX and the graph is just super great, because I can have 20 of these going at a time. And when I click in, I can look at that graph and I know exactly where we are. So thinking about it as a negotiation management tool, I think is very, very, very interesting. I see Orna asked, I didn't see whether or not the videos contain captions stating this is AI generated. I appreciate people know that when they're using the platform, but I'm wondering whether or not there's any disclosures. So, what do you say to the parties about? Yeah.
The disclosures are up front. You're right. We didn't add a note during the videos. We don't view these as compellingly human. So no one's at this point has been confused as to whether these bots are, trying to be human. We're very clear up front. This is bot mediation.
For sure. Yeah. And I see Curtis said all parties have to opt into the T's and C's, so they're well aware of the human hybrid AI aspects. Yeah, ICODR just released guidance for the use of AI in ODR, and a lot of this stuff is still being kicked around. So, I mean, Ethan and Dan.
I saw that. We actually now need to page through. So,
yeah,
thanks for making that available.
Well, we would love it if you were interested in. It's voluntary to adopt the ICODR guidelines for the use of technology, but yeah. Any other comments, questions, reactions for the gents?
Well, you guys can reach out afterwards. I'll put my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out if you guys want to do another demo. Certainly, we can find a time to do that. We'll certainly keep you also apprised as to progress made. But here, I'll put it in.
Absolutely.
Always eager. If you have feedback you didn't want to share on this forum, please feel free to do so, to reach out with that.
One of the other things
I'm
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Darren. Always looking for more feedback.
Yeah. Always looking for feedback. Yes.
Great. And I love the idea of working with a panel of mediators, that can come in and test out the tools and provide advice and sample language. I put a link into this new demo that I saw from Thinking Machines. It's not so much about where we are today, it's about where all of this is going. And I think you can see how your prototype is advanced and as cool as it is. Once you have real-time AI with, real-time video generation, and I saw this demo that they had, I mean, where you could talk in real time. And even if somebody's speaking Hindi and the computer is translating in real time, as it's going along.
Absolutely.
So the technology is just evolving like crazy, crazy, crazy. And I'm sure you guys can plug into all of that whenever it becomes available.
That is the goal. It's funny. The first iteration of this was pretty rough. And, at the time, Curtis reminded everyone, it's like,
you mean the selfies of me instead of avatars? Is that what you're talking about?
those are the ones that will be framed. But I will say that it's so fast and furious in terms of how quickly development and AI are way ahead. And our goal is to stay on that edge, but boy, is it moving fast right now with regards to all.
Yeah, one of the things that I
and-
think this does surface, and I've never seen a platform do this as well as yours does, but this question of human avatar interaction in
Sure.
ODR. We did some simulations in VR when that was really hot a couple of years ago, and it's interesting. How does that change the dynamic? And because there's a lot of emotional cues that happen when you see someone. So I was joking about the attractiveness of the mediators, but that's an interesting thing for us to study as well. Because
Sure.
obviously it's compelling to have a human on Zoom talking to you because they're engaging and reacting in real time. But there's certainly a lot we need to study in terms of how the interaction with these avatars affects user behavior,
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's a lot of subtle cues. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we'll be keeping track.
Yeah, it's important to the users. I mean, Littler is one of our customers, and I can tell you that they are very tactical, and they think the selection of the avatar means a lot. So they don't just say pick whoever you want, and all we care about is the numbers and the advice. I mean, they're very, very particular and tactical about choosing an avatar based on the case type or who they're up against, et cetera.
And
so
it's so,
we need
so
to build
fascinating.
we need to build our portfolio of mediators to accommodate that.
Absolutely.
And sign language and foreign language. That, I mean, is the sky? You could see how the sky could be the limit in terms of the accessibility.
And I mean, obviously, and if you have a human mediator, you only have the one person. But here, you can have one party pick one look for the mediator, and the other party look. And if I pick somebody that looks just like my aunt, maybe when they say, "Are you sure you want to make that offer?" Like that's more effective for me than if I pick somebody who looks like my old high school bully. So there's very interesting questions here. Well, and we have a lot of researchers here that can think about some of this in an organized way. Well, I know we're at time here. Any other questions, comments before we break for the gents? All right. And Malty asks, can human avatars replace human mediators for empathy? That's a big question, Malty. And I think right now the answer is no. But what do you think about Gen Z and Gen A? Maybe they're going to connect with the avatars more. So I just want to say, Nick, Curtis, Darren, thank you so much for coming in, showing us what you're working on. This is really exciting. And we really appreciate you coming in and giving us a glimpse. This is the hottest area of inquiry in global ODR, and you guys are on the bleeding edge. So it was really, really fun to see the stuff that you've worked on.
We're grateful and excited to share it. We look forward to catching up again.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. All right. We'll see you in June.
Thanks, everyone.
Until next time.
Have a good day.